I am in my fantasy book era. Ever since I finished reading the entire Sarah J. Maas universe, I have been on the lookout for more great fantasy books. After going a little wild filling my Kindle with some of the most popular and recommended fantasy series, it might be time for me to take a break from buying so many new books. Instead, I decided to read as many fantasy books as I can on Kindle Unlimited for an entire month. I feel like this is the perfect way to discover hidden gems and fantasy books that I might not have considered before. Rediscovering fantasy as an adult has honestly been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I love how many different kinds of fantasy books there are too. Romantic fantasy, historical fantasy, action-packed and adventure fantasy. I love the world-building element of fantasy, and I love when fantasy has a really unique and fun element of magic. I started the month out with the War of Lost Hearts trilogy. War of Lost Hearts trilogy. This series was so good. Daughter of No World started off very strong. It was so exciting. The female main character is so badass, and I absolutely love her. We've got some really popular tropes in this. The reluctant mentor-mentee, dislike to friends to lovers, determined female main character, plus the grumpy fire-wielding male main character, the who did this to you trope, powers and battles, forced proximity, escaped slave. Things got a little bit bleak there for a while in the storyline. They went through some rough times. Somewhere in the middle, it did start to drag on just a little bit to me, but it did end up picking back up, and the story wrapped up so fantastically at the end. I did love this trilogy, and I do strongly recommend it if you're looking for a great fantasy series that's actually completed, so you can just binge the whole thing. Overall, I'd say this series is 4 stars. The second series I read was The Vicious Lost Boys. I am a sucker for a fairy tale retelling, and Peter Pan is so much fun. The first book is called The Never King. Basically what it's about is all of the darling women have disappeared on their 18th birthday for centuries. Some are only gone for a day, some are only gone for a week, but all of them return broken or messed up in their mind somehow. So the book starts on Winnie Darlings, the great-great-granddaughter of Wendy. It starts on Winnie's 18th birthday. I still don't know how I feel about this series. I saw this review on Goodreads, and it said, was this book good? No. But was it good? Yes. That perfectly sums up how I feel about this series. This series is a lot of smut, This is definitely a dark retelling of Peter Pan and Wendy. Very morally gray characters. And I would say like dark gray. It's reverse harem, touch her and I'll unalive you vibes. Enemies to lovers, found family. While I was reading it, I think I got to like the 3rd book and I was like, why am I still reading this? Why am I still reading this? Because it was so bad, but it was kind of good. There was like this much plot and this much character building, and there was like this much world building. And all the books are really short, probably about 200 pages, and they all end on a major cliffhanger. Before you know it, you find yourself opening up the next book just to find out what happens. And then the plot doesn't get much further for the rest of the next book or the next book. I don't know. This was a 3-star for me because I honestly don't know what to do with a series like this. It's weird because once I finished it, I was like, never again. But I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And there was like one moment at the end where I kind of teared up at this revelation that was made to Pan. So yeah, that one, read at your own risk. I'd say if you like smut and dark romance, go for it. You will absolutely love it. The next book I read was Divine Rivals. I thought this one was fantastic. There's a super smart female main character, Iris. Her mom is suffering from addiction. Her brother went off to war, but the war is a war among gods. And then there's a little bit of element of magic mixed in with all of this olden days war type feel. The first book ends on an absolutely brutal cliffhanger, so if you're gonna read it, I strongly suggest you have the second book, Ruthless Vows, ready to go. These books are just so good. Ruthless Vows was a fantastic way to wrap up this beautiful story. It was emotional. It tugs on all your heartstrings. It gets you right in the feels. I strongly recommend this duology. If you are in a reading slump after Fourth Wing or ACOTAR, I don't think I'll ever be able to forget this story. It will definitely be one that I'll read again. The next series I dove into was The Bridge Kingdom. Let me tell you, this took some willpower. I'm not even gonna lie. I judged a book by its cover. I saw that cover and I was like, no, I'm not gonna read this. And I'm so glad that that I did anyway. This is definitely a major case of don't judge a book by its cover. The first book, I think I was on page 5 and I was hooked. I was in it for the long haul. This one was so unique in that there wasn't magic. There wasn't really a magic element. I think that if I would have known that before reading it, it might have turned me off to it, but don't let it turn you off because the world building is absolutely insane. The character development, mind-blowing. It's basically about a warrior princess who was isolated and trained in the desert. She is promised in marriage to King Aaron of the Bridge Kingdom, and she was raised and trained as an assassin to infiltrate his kingdom and take it down so that her kingdom can take over his kingdom. The first 2 books follow the story of Laura and Aaron. The third book of the trilogy actually follows 2 different characters. I was really disappointed when I saw that, I'm not even gonna lie to you. Laura and Aaron are still very much involved in the third book. They're just not the main characters of the third book. But I am so glad that I read. Okay, my camera just totally died, so you're gonna have to listen to me from this angle for a little bit. Anyway, the second 2 books in the Bridge Kingdom are just as good as the first 2. It was everything I needed to wrap up the entire series. I loved it so much. The entertainment value was so high. I loved seeing the different points of view because you got so much more of the story and understood it so much better. The politics and the plot and the action and the adventure, how amazingly badass these main characters are. I've absolutely fell in love. So those are the fantasy books that I've read so far this month. The only one that was a little bit weird was The Never King, but 3 out of 4 fantasy series being really fantastic is pretty good. I'm actually reading a lot more fantasy books than I thought I was going to be able to have time for this month. So the next series that I'm going to start tonight is Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. I feel like I'm on a really good streak of finding great fantasy books, so I'm excited to dive in. What is even happening? I finished A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. The first book, it wasn't bad. It was pretty bad, but I have questions. What is this book even about? I get that fantasy books are going to have similar tropes, and I get that a lot of them are going to have similarities, but this series was a disaster pile of all the popular top recommended fantasy books kind of thrown in one huge, awful, gigantic mess. There's a ridiculous amount of similarities to From Blood and Ash, except for Poppy in From Blood and Ash is actually a badass, and the female main character in this book, she has no idea what's going on, which is actually understandable because none of the rest of us have any idea what's going on either. There is no character development whatsoever, no world building. The plot, like what plot? There is just smut, so much smut. Listen, I don't mind a little bit of smut, but every 5 pages, the female main character absolutely hates and distrusts fae or fairies, but 20% of the way into the first book, all she wants to do is bang one out with the Walmart version of Resand. As the series continues, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Every 5 pages of the third book is more smut. If I ever hear the word nub or mate ever again in my entire life, I am not having a good time. Are you kidding me? With the end of the second book, literally a lame copycat version of the end of A Court of Mist and Fury. And the third book, it is 1% plot with so many plot holes, it might as well be the Swiss cheese version of A Court of Wings and Ruin, with the most anticlimactic war scene I have ever attempted to read in my life. I made it through A Kingdom of Venom and Vows, the entire third book, and I am now questioning my entire life choices. It made me question whether or not I even like this entire genre anymore. I think there's a 4th book. I'm not reading it. I can feel a reading slump coming on as we speak. I'm scarred or traumatized or something. Maybe it was the overuse of the word nub. 0 stars. I gotta figure out my life choices. When I feel myself falling into a reading slump, there is one tried and true way that I know will get me out of the reading slump no matter what. I need to read a book that is an absolute banger. Did you know that the whole Harry Potter series is on Kindle Unlimited? The greatest fantasy series written of all time is on Kindle Unlimited. There's just something so comforting and nostalgic about the words, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Private Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. Those words could get me out of any reading slump at any time, no matter what. I have a couple days of the month left, so I don't know if I'll be able to read the entire Harry Potter series, but we'll see how many books I can read in the next couple of days. Today is gonna be the best day ever. It's actually a really chill and rainy day today. It's like the perfect weather to read Harry Potter. Are my glasses really reflecty? They are. They're really reflecty. So I finished the first Harry Potter book last night. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is a 5-star read for me. All of the Harry Potter books are a 5-star read for me. It is such a well-told story. It truly makes you feel like you are living it, like you are part of it. When I was little, I had a babysitter that wouldn't let me read Harry Potter at her house. She said it's got witches and magic, and so it's evil, and it wasn't allowed in her house. But even as a kid, that idea just blew my mind, because this story, it's about so much more than just magic and witches. It teaches you how important friendship and bravery and loyalty is, and the connections that we make, and how powerful love can be. And yeah, the magic element in Harry Potter is so much fun. It's unique and it's very well thought out. I love how all of it kind of works together, and there's always, like, every single book you discover new things about magic. It's kind of like you're learning along with Harry. But this book teaches you some really powerful values, and the importance of having a full, intact soul and being true to yourself. I could go on forever and ever about Harry Potter, but it truly is such a beautiful story, and I'm just so excited to finish the second book today. So I just finished Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I forgot how much I love the second book. I love that we get to learn more about Hogwarts and, like, the whole history of how Hogwarts even came about. I love how it ties all these themes together. I love Dobby. I love Dobby so much. I like that it still keeps the same themes of friendship and loyalty and trust. And in this one, they start to go through some stuff that's a little bit tougher, like a little bit darker. I am definitely out of my reading slump. I can't believe how many amazing fantasy books I found on Kindle Unlimited. Reading Harry Potter at the end of this month absolutely saved me from being shoved into a reading slump by A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. Oh, Avada Kedavra! But yeah, I do not recommend that series. Thank you for coming along and reading fantasy with me. Let me know if you do have any other recommendations for fantasy books on Kindle Unlimited, because I am here for it. And we'll see you in the next video.